Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast. And today I have on a returning guest to the show, and I am so excited to have her. Welcome to the show, Harper O'Neill. Great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Gavin.
Yeah, so last year when we had you on, we talked about the Core Set Cube. It was on Magic Online, one of the many cubes in rotation. And today we're going to talk about an update to that cube that is coming this Wednesday, so you'll want to stay tuned for it. But before we get there, Harper, what's new with you? What do you do here at Wizards? And tell everyone about you.
Yeah, I've been working at Wizards of the Coast for 9 years, and I am the Senior WPN Retail Relationship Development Specialist, which means that I specialize in working with our WPN retail partners and helping them achieve things like WPN Premium or walking them through orientation and helping them grow their businesses.
So we had on Mary Catherine a few weeks ago to talk about the Phyrexian language, but also what she does on the WPN side. Do you work with her a lot?
I do. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, and in addition, of course, to working with people like Mary Catherine, helping make stores great around the world, Harper's also done a lot of cool work on our products in the past. Like she worked on guild kits, which was really awesome, and got to do a bunch of hole filling, does some freelance design work for us. So really goes to show, no matter where you are in Wizards, you get a chance to impact Magic. And for anyone out there who wants to come work at Wizards and work on Magic, the advice I always give is find a spot somewhere in the company, come on in, and you'll get a chance to work on the game in some capacity or another. Do you have any cards that have been printed with your stamp on them, either as a hole filling or otherwise, that come to mind?
Yeah, I did Gerard Weatherlight Hero. I also did Munda Ambush Leader and Large Box. Also worth mentioning, the crab card, Charix, was not designed by me, but it's my understanding that that card was designed for me because I have a crab commander deck, and until that card, we didn't have a legend. And the hole filling, a friend of mine, that's Alex Green, who received credit for that hole filling, had come to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about this card?" And I said, "That sounds pretty good." And it turns out it made it all the way into my commander deck.
Well, that is awesome. You've got a crab commander deck. You must have loved some of those MH2 crab goodies. You also designed Large Pox, a card that is very near and dear to my heart, given that I worked on the Mystery Booster playtest cards. So that's really cool. Some fun designs in there for sure. And one other thing that, of course, you have had a strong affinity for, and we talked about last year in our last video with you, was Cube. You love, love, love Cube. For a long time, you even ran a Cube group at Wizards that would meet up every week and Cube draft. A little on hold right now, given the state of the world, but maybe it'll resume someday. So you have quite an affinity for Cube. When did you start cubing, Harper?
Very shortly, I think before I came to Wizards, I had started tinkering with the idea of a cube where everything was modal, like split cards or kicker cards and such. That was basic conceit of that. I had built that before I came to Wizards. Then shortly afterwards, when I came in around Return to Ravnica, I built a Ravnica cube and very quickly started bringing friends in to start drafting that with me. And that was such a success that I had to keep building. And Core Set Cube was the second cube that I built after that. And that has been more of a mainstay in my collection and one of the more rewarding cubes in rotation.
Is that the sound of a Segway I hear? Well, I don't know. I don't know if Segways make a sound. Honestly, I've never been on one. But if they did make a sound, I would have just heard it. As we go into our next section, let's talk about it. So yeah, you mentioned the Core Set Cube. We had it on last year. It is back this year. Like I said, hitting Magic Online this Wednesday. What's new this time around? Tell us about the Core Set Cube and also what you have updated it with in this iteration.
The Core Set Cube is returning as the Alpha Core Set Cube. Now, the Core Set Cube previously, the restriction was only cards printed in core sets could be included. And for previous versions, it only went from 7th edition forward. And that included Magic Origins, and then recently it included any cards up to Magic 2021. However, with the Alpha Core Set Cube, I decided to open it up, unleash its potential, as it were. And we're going to go all the way back to Alpha, and any cards that were printed originally in Alpha, and then all the way up through all of the core sets, leading all the way up to Magic 2021, are eligible for inclusion into the cube.
Well, that's got to be a much larger pool of cards, right? Especially you get like 4th and 5th editions in there, which were almost like kitchen sink sets. I think it's 5th edition that's the largest set of all time with just a ton of cards. So you get a bunch of stuff in there.
That's true. It definitely opens us up to some pretty spicy inclusions. Cards like Mana Flare, Time Twister, Dual Lands, which you'll see in this cube. Worth mentioning, you will not see cards like Black Lotus or the Mox or Soul Ring, any sort of really fast mana. And that is specifically so that we can maintain the relative power level of the core set cube as we had it before, that fans really enjoyed.
Oh, that's really smart, right? So you can still play with a bunch of those older cards, and you have some more powerful cards like Time Twister in there, right? But you're not going to have the starts that are like Land, Mox, Soul Ring, go nuts kind of thing. You get to have a little more restrained starts to your gameplay so that your 8th, 9th, 10th edition, core set 2021 cards, whatever, can still compete with what's going on in alpha.
Yeah, it definitely gives it a very unique personality, separate from things like the vintage or legacy cubes, and gives it a personality of its own.
But I love that you get those original dual lands in there too. So the mana is still probably pretty good. You can draft a 3, maybe even more color deck without too much trouble.
Yeah, mana fixing was pretty tricky in previous iterations. I received a lot of feedback about that. Why can't we do dual lands? I was like, well, we can't do alpha. Not anymore. So we have that, and I'm really excited to share it with everybody.
Well, we fixed that problem. We put alpha in the name, so we're good to go there. Well, Harper, I think we have some sample packs today. Is that right?
That's right. We have 3 packs that we'll just talk through and learn a little bit more about the cube.
Now, I'm excited. I haven't actually drafted the new version of this cube yet, so I don't know exactly what's in here. So I'm going to take a look at this first pack and try and get my best guess as to what I would take, and then kick it over to Harper, she's the expert of course, for what card she would take out of this pack. So let's kick it off with our first sample pack here. All right, so a number of cards I'm looking at here that are pretty exciting. Brain Geyser, a great way to draw up on cards. You want to go into a big blue deck. You've got, of course, some good mana fixing, which we were just talking about, in Scrubland and Underground River. These cards, I think, are often underpicked in Cube just because mana fixing doesn't look that hot, but it'll always make your deck, if you're those colors, can really enable some stuff. You've got a splashable Expel and Disintegrate. If you want to go the damage route, you've got Stoke the Flames, which is a solid removal spell, and direct damage to the face spell. And then, of course, I think it was actually in a pack last year, too, one close to my heart, Wildfire, which can just shut your opponent down, take care of all their lands, and allow you to proceed to win the game. Although you did mention there's less fast mana in here. So a lot of interesting picks here. I do love that Disintegrate is splashable. That one definitely comes to mind. But I think for me personally, I'm going to grab the Brain Geyser. It's just hard to say no to a draw X. You get into that mid-game position. I love being blue, especially looking at core sets over time. So you can draw back up on cards, or also, it's not just Mind Spring. You can also target your opponent. So if the game goes long, you can actually deck your opponent out with Brain Geyser. But there's a number of cards here that I think are good picks. Harper, what would you take out of this pack?
Yeah, I really love the Brain Geyser pick. I want to mention that one of the deck archetypes that you can draft is Turbo Fog.
What? You put Turbo Fog in here?
So Fog is a card from Alpha, and of course it's seen more recent printing, but I haven't seen Fog be included in a cube so much. So I was really tempted to just say, well, I mean, we have Howling Mine, we have Fog. Can we? What do you win with? And Brain Geyser is certainly one card. Another card is Prosperity. So you just draw your opponent to death. And you can rebuy your Fog with cards like Archaeomancer. You can also just, sub in board wipes and just play a strict control shell.
I think you now have successfully, with that 20-second little bit there, have train wrecked every draft I will do in this format, because I'm just going to try and force Turbo Fog every single time. I actually played a lot of Turbo Fog before I came to Wizards, and early on in my career at Wizards, I was like the Turbo Fog guy, and they kept having to put cards in set that would make sure my Turbo Fog decks wouldn't work. Like Skullcrack, for example, has the damage can't be prevented line on there because I built a Turbo Fog deck, right? So very near and dear to my heart. You have my attention. So I can't wait to train wreck, like I said, all my drafts that way. But what would you pick? Are you thinking Brain Geyser also, or is there another card that you'd grab out of this pack? I
like the Brain Geyser, but I think as to be contrarian, I think I would go with, I'd probably go with the Disintegrate. I like a big mana deck, and red can get big with Mana Flare. and I would like to draft burn spells and see how close I can get to a big burn deck.
Yeah, I mean, X-Spell is almost never bad. They were great in Alpha. They're still great now. You'd first pick Disintegrate back then. Not that you could really draft Alpha. No one really knew what a draft was at that point. But if you did, you could first pick Disintegrate, and it was great. So, all right, that's a fine pack. Great sample pack number 1. Good discussion points there. I learned about how the rest of my sample packs are going to have me taking the Turbo Fog cards. Let's go into our next sample pack right here, which we'll bring up on the screen. All right, so a few options here. Nothing really screaming to my Turbo Fog heart, which is too bad. I hope that the third pack has some more Turbo Fog action. But for me, one thing I always like in drafts, and if you've been following my Twitch streams, you would know this too, is I love staying open where I can, and especially in cube, because a colorless card you take will almost always make your deck. If it's a land and you end up in those colors, absolutely. And if it's an artifact, it'll probably make your deck, at least if it's the right kind of shape for that artifact. And the two cards that really leap out to me here are both the Fabled Passage and the Nevinrall's Disc. Fabled Passage just will basically go in any deck you make that is 2 or more colors. It'll fix your mana for you. It even does the shuffling thing if you get some shuffling matters cards, something that sets at the top of your deck or whatever. And then Nevinrall's Disc is just a colorless board sweeper. And if you do draft like a weird colored control deck like blue-red or something, often having that around is important. And with fewer mana rocks in the cube, that's often what I'm worried about in my control decks, is blowing up my own mana rocks with the disc. But if those aren't around, it's not a big deal. Additionally, I don't actually know if there are any planeswalkers in this cube. You can tell me here in a second. But if there are, Nevinrall's Disc doesn't hit your own planeswalkers, which is really nice in a control deck because you can build up your planeswalker defense and then blow the board and keep your planeswalker around. Are there planeswalkers in here?
There are. I think 3 per color, so not nearly as many, I think, as you get in the more common cubes.
But still some, you just gotta keep the dream alive, find your Jace Memory Adept or something. So it's a close pick between the two. I think I'm gonna go for Fabled Passage just because the flexibility is awesome. But a lot of interesting picks out of this pack, and maybe even some cards I haven't discussed. Harper, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so of course my eyes go straight to the Frost Titan. Titans are extraordinarily powerful and always have been sort of a mainstay in the core set mythos, as it were. So they become really central characters as far as powerful creatures are concerned. But especially cards like Inferno Titan, it feels really, really hard to ever pass them. There are mana rocks in the cube, but of course not the Mox. We have the Diamond Cycle as a way to still give you options for ramp, but not necessarily strictly turn 1. So Frost Titan, definitely pretty strong, makes me think about going that direction. I also, I have a soft place in my heart for Marauding Regisaur, and you can get Dark Ritual in this cube. So you can get Dark Ritual into Rotting Regisaur and just go to town. You can also use Rotting Regisaur in a reanimation package, with black-white being the main colors for reanimation, now that you also have access to Breath of Life and Resurrection.
Can you Dark Ritual Hypnotic Spectre in this cube? Please say yes.
You can.
Yes. Okay, that's the deck I want to draft too. Man, so many sweet decks. Turn 1 Ritual into Regisaur Spectre sounds like a good time. Maybe they'll have the swords, who knows, but still sounds pretty good. Sweet. So what would your pick out of this pack be, you think?
I go with the Frost Titan.
Yeah, hard to argue with the Titan. I mean, they're all so strong. Are all 5 of them in here?
They're all in here. And there's also a few of the souls. The souls are in here, and then the Cavaliers are also in here. Those big creature mythic cycles. One interesting thing about going back to Alpha is generally you're not going to get stronger creatures, but you will get stronger spells. And the creatures in more modern day Magic are certainly strong enough to carry some of that weight.
Yeah, definitely, right? You can play some really strong creatures backed by your counter spells, your lightning bolts, your swords to plowshares, all that kind of stuff, right? So you get a really good mix of everything. That's really cool. All right, let's move on to the third pack here and see what's in store for us. Let's pull it up on the screen. Ooh, well, a few things grab my eye in this pack right off the bat. First of all, Intruder Alarm is a very powerful combo card, so I'm always going to be on the lookout to grab this early and then try and find a combo to go along with it. Haunted Plate Mail is a card that is both colorless and really near and dear to my heart because I designed it. And I actually designed it before I came to Wizards and then pitched it as a design after I started at Wizards and it got made. So that's a card that really means a lot to me. I think that just the strongest card in this pack by a decent margin is Sylvan Library. You put it down early, you get card selection, you get to draw some extra cards if you want to pay some life. So I think Sylvan Library is the right pick, but let's throw it all the wind. I'm taking a little Elixir of Immortality. I'm drafting Turbo Fog. I'm doing it. You can't stop me. I'm going to shuffle all my fogs back into my deck. You will never deal damage to me again. That's it. I'm sold. My draft might get train wrecked. Too bad. It's time for Elixir of Immortality. Harper, how unreasonable are you? Are you also going to grab the Elixir or do you have something a little more reasonable in mind?
I mean, Elixir of Immortality, that's a really fun pick. I just really love that card a lot, but I hear you on all of that. We wanted to call special attention to Goblin King. So goblins are still a deck that you can draft. However, I did for this try to tone back goblins just a smidge and then open up the color to more potential for just like generic red aggro, so you don't feel like, oh, you didn't get all the goblins, so your deck falls apart. Goblin King happens to be, one of the better Lord cards that were printed in Alpha. So that one, goblins get to stick around for the cube. Intruder Alarm also combos with Krenko in this cube. Yes.
Yeah.
As well as Ant Queen and some elves. And some mana elves. So you can combo off with Intruder Alarm that way. And a few other tricksy business you can do with Intruder Alarm.
I feel like with Intruder Alarm, you just like throw it and some random cards into the air and a combo appears, right? You're just like, I don't know, just got these tappers and some mana cards and I'm just doing it. I'm killing you with this thing. It just happens sometimes.
For me, I really like Looter. I really like Merfolk Looter. Because I'm a really big fan of reanimation strategies. And I like using Looter as a way to put giant creatures into the bin and then bring them back. So I think I might go with a Looter for this one.
Yeah, you can't fault the Looter pick for sure. I mean, you play that on turn 2, you start looting. It's a very deceptive card. In fact, it was in core sets for a long time at a common, and we had to start pulling it out and making it uncommon because it's just so powerful. On turn 2, it starts dominating the game. So I cannot blame you for picking that card. And if you got, like you said, some Reanimator stuff rolling or what have you, it can do some pretty good stuff. Do you have Lord of Atlantis in here? Can you make its Merfolk type matter and go to town?
Unfortunately not. I tried. Let me tell you though, I tried to make Lord of Atlantis work. I poured over the Merfolk list for a long time, even thinking, can I just put a bunch of clones in so that you can get all of the various Merfolk lords and make that a deck? But it was a little bit too, there wasn't enough strength behind that. Sorry, fans of Merfolk, I tried.
Yeah, my deepest condolences to the professor for not having his Merfolk deck be able to be drafted here. Well, those are 3 pretty fun packs there, Harper. Thank you so much for walking through them. I'm stoked to go, like I said. And if you see my name in your draft pod, do not take the Turbo Fog cards, okay? Or if you want to train wreck my draft, I guess do. But that's what you can expect to happen coming this Wednesday, September 29th, as this goes live on Magic Online sometime in the morning whenever it updates. This was a blast. Harper, anything else you want to say about the core set cube in particular, or any just parting thoughts you have for our audience?
Yeah, I love the opportunity to reintroduce myself as well as reintroducing this cube that's brought me and so many others so much joy over the years. It's a real privilege, and I appreciate that chance to reconnect. Just have fun with it. The core set cube is pretty wide open. There's a lot of we could talk about archetypes, but for the most part, this cube is just full of powerful, nostalgic cards. The colors do what you assume that they do, and there's a lot of really interesting connections that you can make with it. It is powerful, it is fast, it's fun, and I hope that you all get to enjoy it.
Yeah, I really like some of the small interactions you pointed out, like, oh, you can draft goblins, right? That's not every red deck is going to be goblins, but every now and then you can draft some goblins and make it happen. Do you have any like tiny synergies like that, which might not be obvious, that you suggest the audience keeps their eye out for?
Some other fun decks that you could try would be Door to Nothingness is back. So you can always try the Door to Nothingness deck. I also particularly enjoy Berserk into Unleash Fury into Fling or Thud. So you double a creature's power with Berserk, and then you double it again with Unleash Fury, and then you just throw the whole creature with Thud or Fling. Cards like Giant Growth will be your friend here. What I tried to do was identify some of the more really interesting options in Alpha in some of the early days that we didn't get a chance to incorporate into the 7th edition and up restriction, and then see, what new types of decks come out from that. Other cards that you can look forward to are Ankh of Mishra, Copy Artifact, Demonic Tutor, and Control Magic. These are all really powerful Magic cards that we now get to integrate into the core set cube's personality.
Well, that sounds awesome. A lot of really cool old stuff back in this cube. A lot of things people are nostalgic about. But as for me, I'm going to be in my corner, jamming together Turbo Fog and Door to Nothingness as a great way to kill you when the game goes along. We'll see how well that does for me. Well, thanks for coming on again, Harper. It was great to have you, and I will talk with you all again very, very soon. On behalf of me and Harper, I hope you have a great time playing the Alpha Core Set Cube starting this Wednesday, September 29th. And remember, everybody, you got this. On a large level, I'm sure you all recognize all kinds of movies where 13 plays a crucial role in the name or plot. From 13 Ghosts, which has, 13 ghosts, to Stephen King's 1408, where we learned that the 1 and the 4 and the 8 in the title equal